And we're starting off with NXT, and earlier this year it was reported that the Dyad had requested the releases from WWE, but the former NXT UK Tag Team Champions had been denied. Since then, the pair of Rip Fowler and Jagger Reed have continued to appear on NXT as part of the schism, but it now appears that their exit is just a matter of time. On the latest Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer stated that the contracts for both men are due to expire in October, and there's been no sign of a new deal being reached. On Twitter, Jagger Reed changed his name back to James Drake, the name he used before WWE and early into his run, and asked fans who they want to see him face, presumably outside of NXT. Drake doesn't have a Twitter bio, so there's no reference to working for WWE, and his pinned tweet shows him and Fowler with Grizzled Young Veterans merch, their pre-Dyad tag team name. Right now, all signs are pointing to Drake and Rip Fowler, aka Zach Gibson, exiting WWE as soon as they can, as no deal has been reached since their initial request was denied. Now, WWE is dealing with a lot of lawsuits at the moment, with a new one being filed just this week, but they're not the only company that has legal trouble. Like WWE, UFC has faced its own fair share of litigation in the past, and now a lengthy lawsuit could spell very bad news for UFC and the company they'll soon be merging with. It was back in 2014 that litigation against UFC began, claiming that fighters were inadequately compensated considering the substantial profits amassed by the organization. The lawsuit has claimed that around 1,200 fighters were negatively affected by UFC, and this week, Judge Richard Bullaware authorized the fighters to proceed as a class action, seeking around $1.6 billion. During Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer explained that if UFC is found liable, then it could open the floodgates for WWE to deal with allegations of monopolistic influence at the expense of talent. In layman's terms, WWE could be sued for having such influence over the wrestling market that talent felt like they had nowhere else to go, and for a long time, it certainly felt like this was the case. WWE is already dealing with a similar lawsuit from MLW, who claim WWE used their influence to pressure a broadcast partner to nix a deal with MLW, so this situation could be very bad news for Vince McMahon. Right now, few wrestlers competing today are more popular than LA Knight, who often gets the loudest chants of the night whenever he's on TV. LA Knight doesn't even have to be on camera to get loud chants from the WWE universe, and this popularity can't just be contained to one company. During this week's AEW Dynamite, MJF had some fiery words for Roderick Strong, and the fans had some choice words, or rather one word in particular, for the reigning AEW World Champion. As MJF was listing off all the things he wants Strong to do, none of which were complimentary, fans chose not to respond with the iconic "what" chant, but rather with LA Knight's "yeah." This isn't the first time Knight's presence has been felt at an AEW event, as we previously reported on Knight's "yeah" being used by fans during a July taping of Dynamite. WWE is said to be well aware of how popular LA Knight is right now, and have big plans for the superstar, and we can only imagine chants like these will reinforce WWE's resolve to push the popular star in the near future. Over to NXT, as this week's show saw Dominik Mysterio defend the North American Championship against Dragon Lee, with Rey Mysterio in the corner of his son's opponent. We previously reported that this week's NXT was the highest rated show in 2 years, averaging 776,000 fans across its 2 hours, but much of that success has to be based on Dirty Dom. Data from WrestleNomics reveals that Mysterio was the focal point for the 2 highest rated segments on this week's NXT, starting with a promo early into the night. That promo with Mysterio reached a staggering 844,000 viewers, while his post-match segment after retaining his title against Dragon Lee attracted 870,000 viewers. It shouldn't come as too much of a surprise that Dominik is quite the ratings draw, as the Judgment Day are often among the highest rated parts of both NXT and Raw, and have been for weeks. WWE is said to be immensely happy with the faction and all the effort they've put in, and with ratings like these, expect even bigger things in the future for the self-professed greatest luchador of all time. In 2001, Maven Huffman made history by winning the first season of Tough Enough alongside Nydia, guaranteeing themselves a WWE contract in the process. Maven would remain with WWE for 4 years before his exit from the company in 2005, but how profitable was Maven's unique start in the world of professional wrestling? Speaking on his YouTube channel, Maven shared that he made around $800,000 throughout his entire career with WWE, which is less than many stars earn in 1 year these days. After winning Tough Enough, Maven was given a downside guarantee of $50,000, which may seem like a lot of money, but quickly goes away when you remember that talent at the time would have to pay for all their food, travel, and hotels out of their own pocket. Since leaving WWE, Maven hasn't returned for a one-off match, though has spoken with Triple H about the idea. And would you be interested in seeing Maven return? Let us know down in the comments. When Austin Theory began working on screen with Mr. McMahon, it wasn't long before the young superstar was getting ample opportunities, including a US title run and a spot in the 2022 Men's Money in the Bank ladder match. After Vince McMahon retired in Scandal though, and Triple H took over as head of creative, things would quickly turn on screen for Theory, with some alleging that the game was burying him in a screw you to his father-in-law. Speaking on the Babyfaces podcast this week, Theory refuted the idea that he had been buried by the game, saying strings of wins and losses are just part of the wrestling business. Theory then questioned if fans can recall the last time he lost a match, and added that as long as what he's doing is getting fans talking, then he is clearly doing his job. Buried or not, Theory's string of losses would eventually end in late 2022, and the cocky young star would regain the US title in November, a championship he still holds to this day. On tonight's SmackDown, Theory will defend his gold against Santos Escobar, but even if Theory loses, fans should stop to contemplate the bigger picture before saying he's been buried. Earlier this week, it was reported that Nick Aldis had been brought to Raw to work as a producer, but those reports stopped short of saying he had signed a deal with the company. WWE has had their eye on Aldis for some time, but reportedly do not see him as an on-screen character. And is Aldis going to be working for WWE moving forward? Well, when Aldis was asked that question on the K100 podcast, the former NWA World Heavyweight Champion remained coy, saying he could neither confirm nor deny reports of a WWE agreement. While WWE is wanting the British wrestler for a backstage role, that's only a recent call, as back in January, Triple H himself was wanting Aldis for the Men's Royal Rumble. The plan had even been for Aldis to have interacted with Cody Rhodes in the match, and for commentary to allude to their wars over the NWA World title, but for whatever reason, Aldis didn't make it to the match. While a personal favorite of Triple H, WWE director Bruce Pritchard has famously had beef with Aldis for years over an incident in Impact. And do you think he'll make a good producer in WWE, or should Aldis' future be on screen? When WWE made the decision to change Walter's name to Gunther, the backlash from fans was immense, with an infamous tweet from Keith Lee declaring, "Poor Walter." Fans at the time felt that the Austrian superstar was being ruined by the name change, but that overhaul wasn't an issue for the reigning Intercontinental Champion. Speaking with Chris Van Vliet, Gunther said that he was expecting the change, and he had even received a heads up that name changes were happening for talent who used their real names on TV. The Imperium leader added that he was able to get away with using one name throughout his entire wrestling career for a very long time, and said that Gunther will make him more money than Walter ever did. Given the success Gunther has had since the name change, it's clear that fans were a bit premature to call the change WWE ruining his character, and with reports that WWE see him as a top main eventer for years to come, expect to hear plenty more of the name Gunther on TV. And we're ending with Impact Wrestling, as the promotion will soon hold its 1000th episode of programming. This is a huge milestone for Impact, one that at multiple times it seemed the company wasn't going to reach, and Impact are bringing in the big guns to celebrate this monumental occasion. As first announced on Busted Open Radio and later confirmed by Impact's official Twitter account, Team 3D will be on the 1000th episode, marking their first time in Impact together in 7 years. The duo are the inaugural TNA World Tag Team Champions and 2-time holders of the gold, while Devon is a former TNA Television Champion and Bully Ray a 2-time TNA World Champion. The pair won't be the only stars of Impact's past, as Angelina Love, Velvet Sky, and Awesome Kong have also been announced for Impact 1000, as the show will be stacked from top to bottom to celebrate the milestone.